Hey y'all, how you doing? I hope that you are doing well. As you may notice, it is super hot in here. So I am drinking a little glass of wine with some frozen strawberries to cool it off. Did have a couple of things that I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I will be getting ready throughout this. I want to go for a Kali Uchis inspired makeup look because I've been listening to her single, I think it's called Moonlight, and she says something along the lines of veo una muñeca cuando miro en el espejo. So she says, I see a doll when I look at the mirror, and I'm like, that is so cute. Yes. So that kind of inspired me to discuss what I'm going to talk about today, which is getting to know yourself and how that could affect your people pleasing, because I have been there. I wanted to discuss the link that I have noticed between our lack of self-trust and our lack of self-awareness and how that can lead us to people pleasing. This is a subject that is very close to my heart. Something that I've noticed is that the more that I get to know myself and the more that I realize who I am, the less that I feel the need to do people pleasing. Because I used to do people pleasing because I used to think that I was a bad person and that I really needed to prove how much of a good person I was. Many of us living in the US are immigrants, or we are the children of immigrants, and what we learned early in our childhood sometimes does not apply anymore. You know how when you go to certain places you can really see the culture standing out? Well, I feel like in the US there are so many cultures that sometimes it can leave us pretty confused about what our true values are. For example, I was born in Mexico and grew up in the US, and I was taught values that they just didn't really apply to living in the US. You know, the culture is completely different, and I'm sure that many of you feel this way, especially when you move as a child. You find that the culture is just completely different in the US, so sometimes that is hard to understand and move past. So this makes us question who we are, what we stand for, and what truly makes us happy. Additionally, many of us grew up with parents or siblings who were also dealing with their own issues. You know, we're talking about they were dealing with like past trauma, maybe they were abusive towards you or the people that you knew, or possibly even dealing with a mental illness. And although it was not your responsibility to deal with these persons' mental illnesses or their past trauma, you were likely affected by it. And I just think that is very important to address so that you can understand how that affected you and you can understand the steps that you can take so that you can move forward. So as children, as teens, and also as adults, when we suffer from repeated trauma, it is very easy for our brains to start believing that we are told that we are what we are told that we are. For example, if a child has a sibling who keeps calling them fat and ugly, it is very, very likely that this child will grow up thinking that they are fat and ugly. If there is someone who grew up with parents who would call them stupid or dumb, it is also very likely that your brain will start believing that you are stupid and dumb, and this will lead to a circle where your habits are then starting to represent the negative thoughts that your brain is believing. Another example could be if a child grew up with emotionally unavailable parents, experiencing some emotional abandonment, it is very likely that the child will start questioning how is it their fault that their parents are emotionally unavailable? And what kind of person, the child will start wondering, well, what kind of person am I? Why don't they love me? So something that I believe is that if we feel scared, sad, or insecure about something, that is a red flag to let us know that there is something deeper that needs to be addressed. And quite honestly, those thoughts need to be understood. Then you can work on relearning the narrative in a more positive and helpful way. So, for example, me, as someone who grew up in a house where I was bullied by my sister, and I was told that I was fat all the time, I was told that I was stupid, I was called a poser for many, many years, when at the time I was just a child trying to figure out my own interests. Dang. But I also grew up with a mother who was emotionally available. And so this did lead me to bad habits. It led me to, unconsciously, it led me to say, okay, well, I've always been fat. I'm always gonna be fat. So what is the point of me trying to lose weight if I'm fat? I've always been ugly. So what is the point of me trying to take care of myself? Because I'm just so ugly that this is just never gonna change. As I told you guys before, and I'm not sure if you knew or if you remember, and it's okay if you don't, but I grew up with a single mom, and of course it was very difficult for her to take care of 2 children while maintaining a job. She was emotionally unavailable. And so that made me subconsciously, I feel like it made me start to wonder if I was just a really bad person and if it was so hard for someone to love me. So this is what takes us onto people pleasing. As a young child, I learned that being a people pleaser made me feel good. It made me feel like I was proving my worth to people and really highlighting how good of a person I really was, so that people could love me. However, when I would do something nice for people, I would then question, how fake did that look? What kind of a fake person am I? And honestly, that would just spiral into self-doubt. And it would just make me question myself more and more, because then I would even feel guilty to question my actions. And another example is I was never taught to participate in charity. It was just never a thing, always in survival mode. How are you going to help others when you're still trying to help yourself out of this hole? But I was never taught to participate in charity. So when I started doing charity, it just felt so unnatural to me, and it just felt fake. So then I would just start to think that, I'm an alpha person, and I just feel like we are never really told how much work it takes to develop into the person that you want to be, and how unnatural it can feel in the beginning when you start changing your habits. Throughout my self-healing journey, I have finally really understood how important habits are, and I was never taught that before. I always thought that good people are good people, fit people are fit people. If you're not fit, then you're never gonna be fit. But these are things that I'm just starting to learn as an adult, so I thought that I would share that to give you guys some hope. If you grow up with these kinds of trauma, it's very hard to get to know yourself, because you were always following this narrative. So maybe you don't even know who you are. And so this is what I want to discuss on what I've done, what has worked for me, and I hope that this also works for you as well. So the first thing that I would advise is to sit down with yourself, and you have to be honest. You know, you have to break things down, and you have to really explore where you're getting this narrative from. Once you're able to break down like what you think about yourself, good and bad. So taking a look at the bad stuff first, break those things down, and then really start asking yourself, when was the first time that I started thinking this about myself? And honestly, I feel like the first time is really going to tell you a lot of where you got that narrative from. Because we are not born hating ourselves. We are taught to hate ourselves. And it's crazy because we're taught to hate ourselves, but we are never taught to love ourselves, you know. Or maybe there were people that were taught to love themselves, but I guess I just didn't get the memo or something. But I know that there's probably a lot of people who are honestly suffering from the same thing. It is so hot in here. Once you are able to understand where this narrative came from, then you can start working on breaking it down, which is actually kind of fun, but it is hard. So for example, you've always believed that you were unhealthy, but does that make you happy? You can say, no, that doesn't make me happy, and that is not who I want to be. So then you can think about, well, who am I right now, and who do I want to be? And once you have written down who you want to be, then you can start working on your action items. And these action items are gonna be what guides your habits and makes it possible for you to become the person who you want to be. I know, it's really exciting. Like I said, this isn't gonna take one day or one weekend, but I really recommend you to just go somewhere where you can be alone. You know, go to like a coffee shop or somewhere where you're gonna be unbothered. Put on some lo-fi. Take a notebook with you. And actually, I recommend you to purchase a designated notebook to be your journal. Because in this journal, I want you to write down, what do you think about yourself? What do you want to change? What do you like about yourself? Because once you also figure out what you like about yourself, then that tells you what you have to continue taking care of. So for example, before it used to be so hard for me, like if someone was to ask me, what do you like about yourself? I would just be like, I don't like anything. But honestly, now I'm like, oh, I really love my hair. Now I take care of it. I really like my smile. Well, I've made it a priority to, you know, go to the dentist, keep my teeth clean. So there are things that you love about yourself. And even if you don't love them, things that you like about yourself, you know, you also have to give yourself some grace. Because the more things that you like about yourself, then the more positive things that you have to focus. Because trust me, there's still gonna be a lot of change that you're gonna have to do. And also, I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. Once you have figured out where this dialogue, this mean dialogue started, then you are going to have to address this with your inner child and start healing your inner child there. And for a long time, I didn't even know what my inner child was, but I swear, once I addressed this with my inner child and I apologized for being so mean to her, to the little baby, then I feel like that's when the real change happened, because I let her know that she was safe. A book that I do recommend is The Power is Within You by Louise Hayes, I believe. I'm gonna go ahead and link a couple of books that I've really liked reading, and you know, this is a self journey. But yes, so I hope that this was helpful. Do I like this look? No. I hope that this was helpful because honestly, the more that you get to understand yourself and use your habits to change yourself into the person that you want to be, the less that you're gonna have the need to people please, because you are gonna be sure of who you are, because you're gonna trust yourself, because all of your habits remind you that you are the person that you want to be. And like I said, I just feel like no one taught us this. No one taught us self-love. You know, how do you do it? Just kidding. But yeah, I just think it takes a lot of practice, and you know, I just hope that this resonated with you guys, and I hope that you guys have a good evening and stay cool.